Hello and welcome to In Sequence, a comics podcast for everyone. I'm your host this week, Robin, and these are your panelists.
Hey, I'm Matt.
Hi, I'm Jillian.
Hi, I'm Scout.
And this week we are going to be reading Blade Maidens, a webcomic written by Zoe Tunnell and illustrated by Valentine M. Smith. Blade Maidens is an ongoing comic, so we read the first almost 5 issues. We're about 2 or 3 pages, I think, from the end of issue 5, which is what's currently available when we're recording. This is a comic that started in 2021 and is published weekly when the schedule is being stuck to. Along with the 5 issues that are available, there's a prelude. It's like 3 pages, and there are several shorts that happen between issues. This is currently available on blademaidens.com. There was talk like a year ago of it being published by Dark Horse. I have not seen any word about that since, so I don't know if that's still happening, but maybe at some point that will be an option. For now, though, blademaidens.com is where you're going to go to read this along with us. And for just a quick summary, there's a note at the end of the prelude that gives a very succinct summary of Blade Maidens, which goes, Blade Maidens is a romantic fantasy adventure webcomic starring 2 lesbians and their swords. That's it, which is true. But to give a little more context, those 2 lesbians and their swords, the 2 lesbians anyway, are named Sir and Rowan. Sir is a sort of experienced, hardened mercenary, and Rowan is a princess who has escaped from her family. Not that they were keeping her captive, but she ran away with Sir, and they are now on the road, going about various little adventures and dodging Rowan's family, who wants to capture her back, bring her back into the fold, and kind of make her be a proper princess as opposed to a gallivanting trans lesbian sword-wielding mercenary person, which she is now. There's sort of a Monster of the Week style to this, where the issues are pretty self-contained, but as we've gone on, there's a bit more of an evolving story here. It's very pulpy, it's very fun, it's very silly, it's very gay, it's very hot, and we're going to talk about all of that as we go on. Do we want to start with just some general first impressions? How's everyone liking the first 5 issues of Blade Maidens?
I really enjoyed it. I love this read.
Sick.
Hell fucking yeah, dude.
Yeah, I'm having fun with it.
When you said it was Zoe Tunnell and Valentine Smith, I knew I was going to be on. Like, I follow Valentine Smith on Instagram and absolutely love their work.
Awesome.
And they draw a lot of X-Men stuff.
Yeah, I don't, we'll talk about this later with the back matter of like specific recommendations, but I didn't know Valentine Smith quite as much. Once I saw her style, I knew that I'd seen some of their stuff before. Like I kind of connected it to some X-Men illustrations, some pinups that they've done. I was more familiar with Zoe, who just from following online, and also she has done, again, we'll mention these at the end, but the Godzilla Valentine's Day special is the one that I always think of when I think of Zoe, because it's very cool. But yeah, this is their own project they've worked on together. So I really dug it as well.
I hope he gets a Dark Horse printing, because I would pick it up just to like have it.
Yeah, I would also.
Same.
I would be interested in seeing all of the color work here, like printed on nice paper.
Oh,
Totally.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Did you guys all read like the prelude and the little shorts in between issues, or did you just stick with the...
I read the shorts. I didn't actually read the prelude until you mentioned it in your notes. I was like, oh, I should read the prelude.
Okay. It's like 3 pages. It's very light.
I read the prelude, but not until after I had read everything, include like everything that has been released and the shorts, which like when I went to the website and I clicked like start from the beginning, it took me to page 1 of volume 1 or issue 1. So I didn't know about the prelude until afterwards, when they had like a list of everything that had been published and prelude was there. And I was like, oh, hello.
Yeah. I bring this up because I think a good place to start is actually this note that comes at the final issue of, maybe it's the first issue, maybe it's the last issue of the prelude, or page rather, which is a pretty lengthy explanation of just kind of what this comic is. So I'm just going to read that really quickly, and I think it could be something interesting to talk about how we feel about it. So this note goes, we want to promise a few things up front. Sir and Rowan will kiss. This isn't a will they, won't they romance. We give you our word here, and now it's going to happen. It's not going to happen right away, but you have a solemn vow that these idiots are going to kiss and then some. There isn't any outright transphobia or homophobia in this story. Fantasy stories that include these real-world elements are absolutely acceptable takes on the genre and can be fantastic. This just isn't one of them. There's plenty of reasons, but honestly, we have to deal with that shit in our actual lives on a day-to-day basis and don't want to bring that into the story. Sir, Rowan, and all the other queer folks they're going to run into are just living their lives, and that's how we like it. And end, it's going to work out okay. Things will get heavy, people will cry, it won't all be sunshine and roses all the time, but this isn't a tragedy. Sir Rowan's tale is going to take them all over Telos, which is the world this comic is set in, and leave scars, literal and metaphorical, but at the end of the day, this is a swashbuckling love story between two big old queers, and that's all we want it to be. So I didn't read this until after I read the comic, so it wasn't as much of an expectation setter, but I do think it's interesting to have that in there. Like there's kind of the big point for me, which is the calling out that this isn't going to deal with transphobia and homophobia. Rowan is trans. They're both queer. And yeah, just having that spelled out, I think, is an interesting tack to take. And it's one that I really do appreciate. And we can get into a bit more about that as we talk about the content of the story. But yeah, I'm curious how you receive that whole thing just as here's what we're doing. Like, do you feel like that's how it felt to you? And do you like the idea of a comic being like, don't worry, we're going to set you at ease and tell you what to expect?
So I didn't read that before reading the comic. I, just read it when it was put in the notes here. But to me, it feels very much like what I would expect to see on something like a webcomic, if that makes sense. Like when I haven't fully followed webcomics in a while, but back in college when I was reading them all the time, it was there was always that little tongue-in-cheek or really familiar tone of voice of hey, this is what this is about, because you are an independent creator and you're just hey, here you go. Yeah. This is what we're going to be writing about. If you want to see that, come along. If you don't, go in peace.
Yeah. I think it's really helpful for a webcomic, because if someone is starting from the beginning, they might have one page of your comic to read. So it's good to be here's what to expect, as opposed to picking something up at the store where you at least have a full issue,
Yeah, true. There is something about this note that I find kind of endearing, in that it reminds me a lot of a discussion during a session 0 of a tabletop game when you're going over lines and veils for the table. We might have talked about lines and veils a little bit in the Triangle Agency episode, but to sort of give a brief overview, this is the concept of entering into a game where you have a lot of things going on as far as people are role-playing, and you are storytelling together. And so you like to set up, here are lines that will not be crossed. Here is content that we are not going to go into for whatever reason that may be. And sometimes that will be something that the game runner themselves sets up of this is not something I want to cover, or this is not what I want this story to be about, the way that I have envisioned the campaign. And sometimes that is things the players put forward of this is not something I'm comfortable with. And veils are the same thing, but instead of a hard out of this is something we will not touch at all, it is this is something that we will touch lightly and maybe with a veil over it, something that maybe is fade to black or zoomed out a little bit more. We will not linger on it, but it might be present. And that's what this reminds me of a lot, which is basically just here's our baseline. These are the things that we're dealing with. These are not. I think the thing that makes me think of that especially is the statement of we are not dealing with transphobia and homophobia in this story, because I have played in a lot of TTRPG games that are full of queer people who, much like this creative team, are saying we experience plenty of that in real life, and we would rather not experience that in the fantasy world that we are all playing in.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I appreciate, and they say this in the sort of prelude thing too, but I appreciate kind of both approaches to this kind of thing, where sometimes there is room for a story, often when it's metaphorical in a way, right? That's why I love the X-Men. But I also love having opportunities to have spaces that don't have any of that, where I can just focus on other stuff. And also lets me if I'd seen it, to be clear, before I read it, it would let me opt into it at the time that was appropriate for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's something definitely I'm sure I'm going to bring up at multiple times throughout this recording of the idea of just the handling of the trans characters in this story. I sort of misspoke. I said Rowan. I only said Rowan. Rowan's a trans woman, but Sir also uses she, they pronouns. So, who knows what their self-conception is, but I don't want to say that doesn't count as under the trans umbrella or anything.
Right.
But yeah, there is something really nice about, like you said, sometimes it's cool to read a story that it's embodying these things that you deal with and showing a person working through them. And sometimes it's just nice to be this is a story about a character who I see myself in, but who doesn't have to deal with that shit. That is something that I have felt the desire for it so many times. It's just I just want a cool fantasy action story where the hero is a trans woman. And like, I don't want to have to see her go through all the bullshit that trans women in the real world have to go with. I just want to see like myself reflected in this character. And I think that is just like a thing that this story does really well, which again, we'll come back to, because I do want to compare this especially to the depiction of like Sarah in Angela, which not to dunk on that book anymore, but I think there's a very clear book written by a cis person about a trans person and a book written by a trans person about a trans person are very different genres of book.
Yeah. Well, there's also like way more of those smaller moments in this book to establish this relationship, right? There's a moment, I think earlier, I think it's in the first issue, where Rowan is specifically like talking about the fact that she's trans, and also in the same sentence talking about her family that she's running away from, and makes it explicitly clear that she's not running away from them because she's trans. Yes. She's running away from them because she doesn't want to be in the royal family anymore, and they really want her there.
I think the line was like, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I want to be a lady.
Yeah, it's so good.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Also, I think Eldridge is maybe. I just noticed Eldridge has like top surgery scars.
Does have top surgery scars.
So very possible.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much everybody in this book is queer. I think I just specifically only called out Rowan at the beginning and wanted to be clear. But yeah, I think that part of it is really cool, because I think going into this book and you're like, oh, this trans princess who's on the run from the family, I think your immediate assumption is going to be like, oh, it's because they're transphobic or because they want her, they don't want her to be a princess or whatever. And I really like, it is one of those things where that is sort of the easiest story to tell about a trans person. And you know, it's a story that should be told and is like has value in being told. But there's something much more interesting about the story of my family doesn't care that I'm trans, but that doesn't mean that they don't have weird ideas about my gender. Like that's the thing that you deal with also like as a trans person in the real world. It's like even people who don't have a problem with you being trans might still have like weird ideas about gender roles. And it's, there is something very fun to me there about like my family is like totally cool with this, but now they are putting these weird expectations on me because they see me as a woman, you know, because they accept that, because they understand it. They now, you know, now I have to deal with the weird things that they think about all women, you know, and that's just more interesting.
Now I have to deal with the misogyny of it all.
Exactly. It's like just regular misogyny.
Trans inclusive misogyny.
Diversity win.
Diversity win.
We mentioned earlier, like we started talking about some, like this feels like, I think you mentioned, Jill, this feels like a webcomic thing to start out with, you know, this kind of note and this kind of tone. Yeah. So I'm just curious about if this feels like different from other things we've read because of the webcomic-ness of it. I think for me, there are two things. Like one of my favorite things in webcomics is watching the art style change over time because they often run for so long. You just, you know, your art style develops, and that is definitely in effect here. And the other thing is something that I really think of as like a hallmark of webcomics, even though they don't all necessarily do this, is like the text post that comes under the comic. And I think this book uses that in some really cool ways.
I definitely noticed the change in the art style, especially because one of the things I noticed in like the first couple of pages was like nobody's mouth really seemed to move that much at the beginning. Yeah. And like it's still consistently like pretty closed mouth in the rest of it, but there's a lot more expression. I feel like the nitty-gritty of the expressions kind of improves over time.
Yeah, expression is definitely getting there as we get further in. I think in the early stuff, there's also a lot more same faciness, where there are moments where I get a little muddled on which character is which and who's talking. Yeah. As far as just like who's in the panels. And as the comic has gone along, you can see that the art has evolved a lot and there's been a lot more experiment, even though it is still sort of like this very, I think, like expression conservative style of like, there's not a huge variation of emotion on the characters' faces. There's not a ton of really dynamic posing. You can still see the evolution of that and like the improvement of that over the course of the book.
Yeah, there were definitely times early on when I like sometimes could not tell the difference between Sir and Rowan. Like I was like, I don't know who I'm looking at.
I was really relying on hair.
Yeah, when Sir's hair grew out, I was like, oh no, wait.
I was very very concerned. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this issue and understand what's going on.
And I think, yeah, they also just seem to be like phases of like color use in particular.
Yeah.
Where like, early on, a lot of this is like, it'll be like red, blue, and yellow are like the colors, and everything is just a solid color. And then as it goes on, there is more like that stays like a theme for sure, but there are more like more and more panels that are full color or even just add skin tones and add extra colors and things like that, which I think there's a big jump for issue 5 into way more like, traditional like color work as opposed to these like single color panels, which is interesting. I think both of them work at times, and both of them sometimes I'm like, I could, I like the other way sometimes.
I think one of the things that I struggled with the most with these single color panels is I love the use of a single color panel, but with a lot of these like stuff like what color is being used for what purpose in a panel would shift panel to panel, and that made readability a little worse, which is like a very in the weeds art thing for me to call out. And so I don't know that anybody who doesn't have experience like trying to work in limited color palettes would really understand what the hell I'm talking about. But things like sometimes a medium blue will be representing a specific character in a panel, and then sometimes it will be representing a background versus foreground character, and maybe that will swap from it being one character to the other. And so it can mess with your perception a little bit of like your continuity and like who was talking. Is it still the same person? Is it a different person? And I think as the comic goes on, consistency of use of the solid colors felt like it evened out a little more, and everything got a little better readability wise.
Yeah, I think when it starts to be, especially in the final issue we read, it starts to feel more like intentional, like because it's not the only style, like when that is deployed, it's like, okay, it's a little easier to read something into it when it's not on every panel, where you go, oh, okay, now I can like get something, get some meaning out of this.
I do want to circle back on the text post at the bottom, because when I started the comic, I noticed that there was sort of these bits of microfiction that were underneath each page. And I had a decision to make of like, what am I looking for here? Am I looking for like being very consistent, being able to go like page to page to page and follow the story fully without sort of a break in that focus into something different? Or do I want to try and read everything, including this microfiction, and sort of incorporate that in? And I ended up going with option 1 of sort of skipping the microfiction and just going through the pages. And I kind of wish that I had done option 2 and went with reading the microfiction. And I might go back and do that eventually, because it seems like there's a lot of interesting little world building stuff in there that isn't necessary for reading the comic, which I think is good. It's really good that I don't feel as though anything is in the text at the bottom of the page that is important to the narrative happening in the comic in a way that anything in the comic like stops making sense without reading it, but it still would add more to it, I think. And so I would probably recommend readers read that.
Yeah, I did the same as Scout.
Yeah, I was gonna say I also skipped it. I read some of them if they like looked visually interesting as I was scrolling down the page, if like it caught a word or something like that, but I mostly didn't read them.
Yeah, I read most of them. I would say I would kind of scan, and if it seemed interesting, I would read it, because there were some that's clear, like, oh, there's like a joke in here, and that's fine or whatever. The ones I would say, if people want to be picky about it, just look at the line at the end that says where it's from, and the ones that are from Rowan's journal are more often than not worth reading. Because like you said, a lot of the other stuff is like world building stuff where there's like an explanation of like where werewolves come from, and of like the order of the two fists, and like history of stuff like that. But then some of them are Rowan's journal, and there's a lot of like you said, it's not stuff that you need to know, but there's stuff about kind of how her and Sir's relationship develops. I'll call out some specific ones when we get there, but there are some that's a lot about her kind of like internal like sense of self and stuff like that are, I think, maybe more important for character development than the rest of the other text bits. But I just always like that that's there as an option. Like I think even when I was reading a lot more webcomics, I don't think I ever always read them, but it's cool to have this like, it's like the Dark Souls item description thing, where you're just like a little bit of bonus if you want to like really understand the world in a like a a diegetic way.
It's the webcomics grimoire.
It's exactly.
I'm also not a video game codex reader, so it's kind of not surprising that I didn't read those.
I do think that also ties into another thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, which is that I think that this comic would actually be the most effective if, like, it was something that you were following through serialization as it updates, and you're caught up with updates and you're reading the updates as they release instead of sort of reading it all in one chunk. And specifically, I think I have a theory that the serialization would act as a pacing tool, because not only would that sort of give a reader more incentive to take the time to read the sort of postscript that's in the description, because that's the page for today, and so I can hang out on this web page for a few extra minutes and read this other thing. But also having that time to breathe, I think, would make some of the pacing that feels quick in the dialogue or in the action and like the way that things happen in the comic. For me, there were some moments where I was like, this is a lot of stuff and it's happening really fast. And if it was paced out and you were reading it as a serialized piece of fiction, then you would have that time in between to sort of process what was going on, and it wouldn't feel so close because there would be that literal time in between each update.
That's interesting. I think when we read like monthly like single issue comic books, people will often talk about like the concept of a book that reads better in trades versus reads better in serialization. Mm-hmm. And people will often say like, I write for the trade, or I write for the issue, those kinds of things. And often I find that specifically like big two American comic books have like the opposite problem, right? It doesn't work as great in serialization. Works really great when you pack 6 to 7 issues together.
Yeah. I think that makes sense, especially like the pacing thing, like where we have ended off now. There's like a cliffhanger at the end of a page, and so you get to hang out with that all week, which is interesting. And I think it kind of works from the other direction too, where like you said, there's a lot of like fast-paced stuff happening in this book, but then there's also some pages that are just like, we're going on a shopping trip, or this page is just like hanging out at the campfire. There's like almost slice of life stuff going on. And I think that also benefits from that slow, like, I have a week, I'm just going to like sit with this in this nice little rest period, and then stuff's going to kick off next week. It's going to start with a big fight or whatever. So yeah, I do like that idea of waiting a week as the pace the comic is meant to be read at. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that's not to say that I think like it's totally ruined if you read it all at once, but it was something that I noticed that I was like actively thinking about. I bet that this would work really especially well if it were that I was reading one page a week as it updated. And I had that time, because I've read webcomics like that in the past that have felt that way, where it's every time there's an update, it's like, wow, this page has like so much stuff in it, and it's because it's the page for the week. But if you're reading like all 27 pages all at once, you're like, wow, each of these pages has so much stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff for me to try and take in all at once.
Did we have a favorite like story beat or issue?
I was just about to say, like, starting it off, I'm like, yeah, Sarah and Rowan's like story here is really cool. And then we get introduced to a werewolf bard, and I was like, I'm sold, baby. I'm sold. Give me big monster woman. So I was like, I think that's what hooked me in, was when Melody gets introduced. I was like, I'm obsessed with her. I was like, I just need more of her. I was like, I love the two main characters, but also she's great.
Yeah, I think that's like a lot more like party conflict happens as soon as she's there too, because she just instantly wrecks their shit, and it just becomes this thing about them like recruiting this gang of weirdos and trying to like make all their personalities work. And I really like that it does work. Like I feel like you could very easily be like, these people all hate each other, why are they hanging out? But I think it feels like they feel like a natural group to be together. Yeah. Like, I mean, Scout, you referenced like session 0 is for tabletop games. This feels like such a tabletop party where it's like everyone has so much drama, everyone has like their own little adventure they're on, but then they have to come together for a common purpose, and like making that work is very tricky. And I think that this book does pretty much make it work. There are times when I'm like, I don't know if you guys would stay together. Like, this feels like it would be a fracture you couldn't come back from. But I do like that process of watching that fracture and rebuild happening over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it definitely hooked me a little more when I realized, like, oh, sort of by the time we got to issue 2 and we got introduced to Melody, I was like, oh, this is going to be like a we're collecting adventurers kind of a story.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love to collect new friends. Just like put them in the little Pokeballs. I have them on my belt. Here we go.
I was really worried Eldritch wouldn't fit in.
Yeah.
And I ended up really liking the dynamic that they brought to the party.
Yeah. Yeah, because at first they show up and they're just like, I'm going to kick your ass. And it's like, oh, is it going to be just like this rowdy, like
rowdy boy?
yeah, just sort of like a too chaotic for the party. And then you kind of learn the Order of the Twin Fists backstory or whatever. And you're like, oh no, this is actually sick as hell.
Yeah,
like,
I
he's
think
there
that
to
was
fight,
my
but for
favorite
good
issue.
reasons. Like, it's really cool.
I think the plot beat that I really liked the most, that I found the most compelling, is kind of just got resolved a little bit, was when Rowan uses her magic to kind of make Mel shift into werewolf form by like creating a moon.
Yeah, it's really fucked
And,
up.
Doing it because they were in a tough situation and needed, some big fighting energy, but also like not entirely having control over the situation and not really thinking about like how bad that would make her feel. And I think that particular like knot in their relationship gets handled in a way where they're like, hey, this was a bad situation for both of us. We're gonna agree to never fucking do that again, or I'm gonna actually beat you up.
Yeah.
And I really liked it. I thought it was a really compelling little plot beat.
Yeah, agreed. And like the ship adventure comes right after that, which I think is so good. Like there feels like there's so much more plot in the latest issue where like there's this whole new cast of characters. Then there's this conundrum of like, oh, we're stuck at sea. And then that resolves in a really unexpected way. It also introduces my favorite character, Perch, who is my girlfriend. I love Perch. She's amazing. The panel when they like open the barrel and find her and she's
It's
just
really
like
good.
curled up in there and she goes, I can explain. She's a little like fish monster. So good. I love Perch. I think my favorite plot, like one of my favorite things though, is at the end of the Fae issue, which I think is not my favorite issue. I think that's like, that thing is so hard to pull off of like, the idea is the Fae have sort of taken over this town and Rowan figures it out and kind of challenges Morgana, the queen, to this like test of wits. And I think that's a really hard story to write because you have to be able to write like a riddle and an answer that feel like they would satisfy this like Fae creature, which I think no one is really quite equipped to do because that's the whole point of it, is that it's almost impossible. Like that's how they work.
Yeah.
But the way that they resolve it is such a cool character moment for Rowan. The way that it ends up being resolved is Queen Morgana, and I think this is like probably a good time to talk about some of the gender stuff in this comic. Queen Morgana says, like, my challenge to you is to name something that does not change, like that I could not change. And she gives a couple answers that don't work. She's like, the world, no matter what, it's always the same. People die and people get born and blah, blah, blah. And Morgana retorts with like, every flower that is bloomed changes the world in a real way. So it's kind of very philosophical stuff like that. And the answer that Rowan ends up giving is the thing that doesn't change is myself. And Morgana immediately is like, no, like people change all the time. That's just, you fucked up. And the kind of solution to that is that Rowan is like, no, you don't understand who you're fucking with. Like I put in a lot of work. And this is like very directly referencing her transition and being like, I had to fight to make myself who I am. Like I have done more work than you can imagine to understand who I am on a fundamental level. And I know that no matter what change comes to that, there is always a core to me that remains the same because I have done the work to like dig that core out and to understand it. And obviously that's going to hit hard for me. Like that is such a, I don't know. It's the cool way that this comic, I think, handles like Rowan being transgender, where this is a magical world. And so there is this like metaphysical aspect to gender and to transition, but also talk to any given trans woman in the world. We talk like this all the time. Like we love making this stuff into magic and metaphysics because like when you've gone through this shit, like that's how it feels. And so it was so cool to me that functions both as an element of a fantasy world world, and also a very recognizable part of transition and thinking about your own gender and developing your own identity. And that's the kind of stuff that I think like really makes this comic so good about like just depicting this trans heroine, where it's not going to be a plot device in terms of, oh, we're not allowed to stay here because they're transphobic or anything like that. It's not going to give you the transition story and the things you expect, but it's going to come up in ways that you would never see coming as an element of Rowan's character, as opposed to being an element of what the world is like. And I just think that is like, it's so smart. It's so recognizable to me as like the way that we think about our gender. Yeah, I don't know. So that it really just stuck with me. And then that becomes a recurring plot thing in the next issue, because you find out that it seems like Morgana has changed Rowan in this way, that she has sort of twisted her magic somehow. And now it's like dealing with that that violation becomes another story beat to take on that has so much more impact because of who Rowan is and because of the work she's done to form her an identity. I just think that's like really well done stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that like you were talking earlier about Sarah from the Angela comics, and like thinking about Sarah's story versus this as far as, you know, dealing with being a trans woman. And I think it just clicked for me that it's like the stuff with Sarah feels narrative and the stuff here with Rowan feels experiential. Like it really is. This is something that is talking about the experience of being trans in a way that the Sarah stuff just wasn't quite doing for me in that way.
Yeah. It's like the Sarah stuff, like it's not that it feels untrue or like
right.
inaccurate to the experience, but it's just it's a little more shallow. Like this is the kind of stuff you get when you have a writer who has thought these things about herself, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's just so much more depth to that conflict.
Yeah, I agree with you that storyline is like not the strongest in the series, but that issue introduces my favorite thing, which is just like the town of Farron.
Yes, it introduces Frog wearing hat, which is the best character.
I really like Frog wearing hat.
The concept is that like the Fae have hidden this town and basically like stolen all the people within it. And through this battle of wits, Rowan is able to like free this town of people. But then those people keep showing up in other issues. And it's this little bit of world building done both through plot, but also through like character work that I loved. I loved every time that stuff kept like having ripple effects in the story.
I liked how the Fae talked in emoji.
Yeah, that's so
the picture
good.
of Frog wearing hat just reminded me.
So smart. Yeah.
Very good stuff.
Yeah, the whole setup for that and the thing with the bees, like
the bee thing was very cool.
All the setup to that was great. I just think that kind of riddle, supernatural riddle thing is always a little like
it's always tough.
Yeah, it can go either way. I think this is a pretty well handled version of that, but it's definitely solving my riddles 3, especially when it feels like it's sort of a very serious emotional beat. It's very much like, we're teetering on, like, I don't know if this is working for me. Yeah. So like you said, really hard to pull off, but pretty good here.
And I think maybe that's why it ends up working for me with Rowan's answer, because it's so unconventional. It's so could only be an answer that Rowan gives. And then the sort of the thing that comes after the conclusion is she wins this battle. And then you find out later, like maybe she didn't, and I think that is so much more interesting, where it's like you're dealing with Fae, like they do not have to play by the rules you think they are playing by, So I think that is a really good way to get out of that trap of like, is this really a good enough answer to win a battle of wits with like a supernatural entity who exists to do this thing? And the answer is like, maybe it wasn't. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I do like Morgana's entire vibe though.
So good.
Yeah.
She looks amazing. Her crown, just that whole thing. That's also a good fashion corner moment. The thing that Rowan
Great
is wearing
vibes.
to meet Morgana. It's this cool, like a sheer long sleeve top with these like roses on it. And then like a vest over top of that with like a corset under it.
Yeah, I really like that outfit.
It's so good.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the art, specifically the like graphic design influence on this art. This is something that like Valentine Smith does and like all of their art, which is use really prominent circles.
I was going to say the circles were definitely like a thing I really noticed and loved.
Yeah. I love it. Like I said, it feels like graphic design, but it also feels like Art Nouveau or like Renaissance art with halos and whatnot. I adore it. Like even that moment you were talking about where like Rowan like solves the riddle or whatever, you get like all these versions of herself.
Yeah.
And it's got like 3 overlapping circles, but the versions of herself are also basically the equivalent of the rays that we see coming out of those circles in other pages. And like, yeah, it's a really like maybe cheap, maybe easy way to like bring the reader's focus on something, but it also just like looks fucking cool.
Yeah. Well, and the circles are like nice and the line is very thin, which I think really helps.
Yeah, it's used with a lot of intentionality.
Oh, except the one that Robin just said. But yeah.
Well, those are thick lines. But this is a page that after like Sir and Rowan are having a conversation about the kind of changes that Morgana has done to her, and they kind of like have a little fight and then have this kiss where it's like yellow over the whole page, them kissing in the center with these like concentric red circles around them. And that's like that stuff like also I just loved all of the stuff that's like I'm not drawing what's in the world, I'm just drawing this like feeling and this image of what you're seeing. Yeah, I love all that designy stuff. It's so fun.
Yeah, this page here is the one that like really like stuck out to me and is the page that I thought about like after reading. One, the colors on this page are wild.
They're really good.
But 2, the circles are not just on like Mel's head, like with the halo and the rays. You also get the circles like calling out that her wrists are tied down. And everything about this page is perfect.
Well, and the ropes that are tying her down also come out of the circle, almost like the rays. And it's
like rays,
cool.
yeah. I think all of this falls under what I started like noticing and sort of categorizing to myself as I was reading as convey like through the art conveying emotion through these effects versus through the expression. I talked a little earlier about how these aren't especially expressive characters. You know, I come from an animation background, from like a cartoon background where it's very much about they drill into your brain. You need to be pushing expressions to really try and like convey an emotion. And that's just not like the place that this art comes from. But something that ends up, I think, being really effective is the use of stuff like these circles and like non-diegetic wiggly lines. And sometimes there's like spiky lines too, you know, like almost like somebody that sort of effect that you get sometimes, that old film effect of like someone has scratched off the film, like an actual piece of physical film and left these white scratchy lines. There's some of that in here too. And all of that, like along with the dialogue, ends up conveying the emotion that you're not necessarily getting with just the faces of the characters.
There's another cool thing. This is not like the same thing, but the last 2 panels of this page, one cool use of color is these are 2 panels where there's Sir and Rowan are totally red. It's night, so everything else is blue. But Rowan has like a fire in her hand that she's using for light. And that just, everything that is in that is just yellow. And I really love the like cutting the actual colors with the glow of the fire just being like a yellow wash. There's just something fun about having all these colors stacked against each other. And this is an instance where it does feel very clear what they all mean. Like it's blue because it's night and it's dark out. It's red because that stands out for the characters. And then the yellow is the fire.
Yes, absolutely.
Like it's not acting like real light, but it is a very cool, like designy effect that I really appreciate.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. That reminds me a lot of also the way that the cover of issue 5 looks, which is one of my favorite pieces in the everything we read today. The cover of Dead in the Water with the yellow circles over everybody's face.
Yeah.
Also, that just really establishes that our party has grown. There are now 4 columns on this cover.
And it's also like they're arranged in an order where like Rowan is the one that's deepest underwater here as as far as like the visual ascension of these characters. And that feels very real to what Rowan is going through right now as far as what's going on with her magic. And she feels like she is in the bog the deepest.
Yeah. It also feels like, we're seeing in order of like who we know more about.
True. Yeah. The deeper it goes.
Or at least think we know more about. As the end of the most recent page kind of makes me wonder how much we actually know about Mel and her situation.
Yeah, I can't decide if I think that that's a red herring or if I think that's actually something. I mean, we can't know yet because the issue isn't done, but...
Just another unrelated art thing. I was at first not sure how much I loved the werewolf depiction. Like, it's very non-traditional, I think, for how we see werewolves. There's just something almost kind of silly about them. But then later on, especially in posting a page from the last issue, Dead in the Water, the werewolf, like Mel as the werewolf, looks so fucking cool. It's just so like
cool.
These individual strands of hair, like throughout her body, you can just see so clearly defined. There's just something about this page in particular where she's going on a rampage where she just looks like this like weird, like writhing beast because of all the squiggly little hair lines. Like it looks so cool. I really have fallen in love with this design as I read more.
I really, really like the concentric circles in the eyes every time the werewolf shows up. I think especially because they are like so uniform and all of the fur rendering around it is very wiggly and like not uniform in that way. And so it helps with like the contrast and really makes them stick out every time. I like that.
Also, this panel, I just think it's silly. I like it. Lots of cool fishmen in the last issue.
Yeah, lots of fish guys.
There's a lot of really cool like ancestries in here. Like a lot of like cool like fantasy creatures.
Yeah, just very casually people will like have horns or like, oh, that's an orc.
Yeah.
And they're just hanging out. I like that.
I like the shark guy in the back.
The shark guy's so good.
The hammerhead
lizard
shark guy?
merchant.
No, on this one that we just posted in the chat, the like he's not a hammerhead. He's just got like a regular shark fin.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But he looks like a man with a shark head.
Yes.
That's it.
Shark man.
One of the like text posts kind of
Shark kick.
talks. Yeah.
Shark.
Kind of talks about that, where it's basically like a journal of some sailor or whatever talking about how much of a pain in the ass it is to fight merfolk, because it's like they're just kind of everything. Some of them are big crabs, some of them have tentacles, some are just sharks. I don't know what to do when one shows up. It's just very fun.
You never know what you're gonna get.
Else, like this is kind of a more straightforward comic in some ways than we've gotten, where it is just like this is a cool pulpy adventure and it's fun to read.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's just neat. I don't know.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
Yeah, I would say I don't think it's like a lot of the stuff that we've talked about that we liked, I think is like cool and unique to this. But like in terms of like the story, I don't think it's like one of the best things I've ever read or anything like that. You're right. It is just like pulpy and neat, and I want to read more.
Yeah.
But like I think you're right. Like I don't have a ton more to say about it. I think people should read it though.
For sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it's fun and that you should read it.
Yeah.
And also it's very sexy, which is
It is
nice.
there's some very sexy scenes in there, and I was like, this is very good.
Like, yeah, after Sir and Rowan, there's that very cute part of that issue where Rowan is out like killing a deer for dinner, and Sir is like sets up lights at their camp and it like makes a little like date for them.
Little date.
Oh, it's so cute.
That was really a sweet part.
And Rowan's just like, I can't believe you finally did this on a date when I smell like absolute garbage. How dare you?
They do talk a lot about how they smell like shit, which I think is like, you know what? You didn't really think about that a lot with stories like this, but you definitely would.
Yeah. You would be stinky.
You'd be so stinky.
You would be stinky.
Yeah, I think like the kind of like deepest stuff for me was the gender stuff and the way that it plays on, and even the ways that it often is not like a focus. Like I just again just really appreciate that there can just be cool adventure comic starring like these queer ladies, and it's just like it feels queer even when that is not like the subject of the story. Which I don't know. I just love them as characters, having that as part of them.
I am interested to see where Mel's story goes, because I don't often love the like self-destructive character that is like working through shit, but I think that we've kind of like narratively worked through the lowest hanging fruit there, and she clearly still has other stuff going on.
Yeah.
So I want to see what's up there.
Yeah. I'm really eager to learn more about Sir as well. Like, I feel like she has the least drama. Like, they're very straightforward, so it's kind of just big, hot, butch mercenary, which, like, no complaints, but it would be cool to see like some more development there. Also, I really hope Perch comes back. I love Perch. She's so funny.
Sixth party member.
Yes. It's so funny when like they pull her out of this barrel and she gives this story that is basically just Rowan's story, where she's like, I was the princess and I had to escape. And Mel is like, you're full of shit. That's not who you are. Tell the truth.
What you said, Robin, about enjoying the way that this feels and the way that it is about queer characters, but not necessarily about queer plights, I guess you could say. I think, and just like that, I want to highlight that that's something that I think is really important, that like we need to continue existing in a world where people tell both kinds of stories, because both are very important. Yeah. Like, it's very important sometimes to really interrogate the things that go on about, discrimination against various different offshoots of the queer community and hardships that people face, or, the difficulty of transitioning as far as other people, as far as yourself, all of that stuff. I think it's good to make a story about that, but I think it's also really good to have a story where it's just sort of a normal adventure story and all the characters are queer and trans, and that is a part of them, but it's not like a part of their story in that same way. And I think that both are really important to me, and I think important like to see in the world.
Yeah. It's good to read a story about like queer ladies once in a while that doesn't make me want to cry,
Yeah.
Like, that seems so rare. It's nice when it shows up.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, while we were talking about issue 3, it wasn't the right time. So it was just a spare thought. In that page where we're introduced to Morgana, there is a person in the back that, like, every time I look at this page calls out to me. It's mostly because one, they have nipple rings, and I noticed that immediately. Two, it's like maybe one of a few remotely large bodies in this book, which, like, I don't know. I kind of have an issue with that generally among like art and comics anyway. But like, also it's clear to me that Valentine knows how to draw a thicker body type in an interesting and realistic way. I would love to see more of it, but I don't know. That person just, like, every time I look at this page jumps out to me.
Yeah. I'm looking at this page now.
They got a good vibe.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to talk about the goat-headed guy.
The goat-headed guy is cool too, but I don't know. I see those in comics a lot.
That's fair. I see goat-headed guys in comics.
They were a dime a dozen.
I'm not even joking. I see more goat-headed guys than I see fat people, so.
I'm unfortunately not surprised by that.
Yeah.
Also, I just have to call out, like, you said how, like, hot this book was, and it is obviously extremely focused on women and just, like, sapphic things generally, but also there's a dude in issue 2 that made me realize, like, Valentine can also draw real hot guys. It's the one that, like, Mel is maybe it's issue, I don't remember, but it's like Mel has a, like, kind of a past
like
with
the bartender,
he owns a bar.
or something.
Yeah.
Is that
Oh yeah.
I'm just flipping through my screenshots
yeah.
now and seeing, I love just randomly talking about just, like, I don't know, gay shit in this comic. There's a short where it is a woman talking about how upset she is that, like, a friend of hers like confessed her love for her, but she's like, oh, but I'm straight. I'm not interested in women.
Yes.
So I had to ruin our friendship and run away. And then she's attacked by some monster, and Rowan shows up and slays it. And she immediately is like, I need to call her back. Like, she has just like an instant gay awakening and has to go like to call her friend.
I did really like that.
So funny.
Another visual thing that I really like is, it's something I've seen in other places, but it's something I always really like, is just when the blood is hot pink. Oh
God, I was going to say the same thing.
Maybe it's because I was on Tumblr when Danganronpa was really big, but I'm a sucker for the hot pink blood sometimes. I think it looks sick.
Yeah, it does look sick. Ugh. Yeah, I think that's what's so fun about the bold colors is like there can be like these incredible contrasts between the colors on the page and like make it still work.
Yes.
Ugh, love it. Yeah, I guess that is it for Blade Maidens. Moving into some back matter now, though. I know I mentioned up front the writer Zoe Tunnell, artist Valentine M. Smith. Just to give a more thorough list of their work here. Zoe's done like seems to do a lot of like special issue and one-shot stuff for the kind of the big two publishers. She wrote a Marvel United Pride special, as well as the Godzilla Valentine's Day special, which was for IDW, I believe. She also wrote a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind comic for IDW. I also wanted to shout out Graveyard Shift, which is another, I think it's just a one-shot webcomic that she did about like a girl who's bored at work and her ghost girlfriend comes to visit her, which is just very fun.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
That Power Rangers comic is the tie-in for that recent Power Rangers video game, the beat 'em up that came out last year.
Oh, interesting. Have to check it out. Valentine Smith, it sounded like, Matt, like you might be more familiar with their work, but and she's done covers for a lot of things. There's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic she did covers for, and also there was a Life is Strange comic that they did at least one of the covers for, as well as that Godzilla Valentine's Day special with Zoe.
Yeah, I'm mostly familiar with Valentine from Instagram. I follow a lot of comics artists and a lot of comics writers on Instagram. And so, I don't know, I end up just like getting stuff recommended me and just following them. And because I follow a lot of X-Men people on Instagram, I get fan art or, you know, professional artists doing fan art of things all the time. And I can really, really recommend Valentine's Instagram generally, whether you like X-Men or not. There's a lot of Blade Maiden stuff on there. There's, I don't know, like advertisements for a hockey team. Valentine's
they're really good.
I was going to say all of their hockey stuff is so good.
And yeah, I mean, like on Tumblr, I will often come across Valentine Smith magic drawings because I follow the magic tag because magic's my favorite Marvel character. Yeah, I don't know. I love whenever I see a new Valentine Smith piece.
Yeah, I was gonna say when I was scrolling on their stuff, they have some like incredible Baldur's Gate 3 art of Orin the Red and Karlach and Dame Aelin, which is the Dame Aelin one is just so goddamn detailed. It's crazy.
Yeah, they have such a recognizable style. It's like you know at the instant you see it. It's so good. Okay, I'm just lost scrolling on her webpage now.
Me too.
And just for other shout outs, I don't know if people have other things to recommend that feels similar, but I was just thinking of other like queer adventure comics that I know of. This one is much more like YA focused, but there's a comic called Cosmo Knights, which is about a like space mechs kind of with like another runaway princess and queer love interest. It's very fun. It's much more like I said, all ages than this comic is. So not as quite as much boobs and blood, but very fun regardless. I don't know if anything else comes to other folks' minds, but
somebody wrote Paper Girls here, and again, not as much like boobs and blood because it is a bunch of teenagers. But
it would honestly be upsetting if there was as much boobs and blood.
If you want like a science fiction like time travel adventure, Paper Girls is actually pretty close. I will say because that's set like the base timeline in that book is set in the 80s. You get more. You don't really. I wouldn't say you get like homophobia necessarily, but you do get just like apprehensiveness towards obvious like queerness. There is a slur thrown around, but it is by a character who is like queer, and it's very clear that it's just like self-hatred kind of thing.
Well, cool.
I don't think I have anything else to recommend here, unfortunately. I gotta broaden my horizons a little bit.
Yeah, people gotta write more queer adventure stories. That's really what it is. The truth.
It's true. Don't blame yourself, Scout.
If we think anything else in the meantime, we can put it in the show notes. But otherwise, everyone out there, write more queer adventure stories for us. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And with that, in sequence, is a member of the Worst Garbage Podcast Network, which you can find online at theworstgarbage.online, where you'll find all of our other podcasts and even some that we aren't on, if you can imagine such a thing.
It's possible.
It is possible.
Huge if true.
You can find my podcasts and my stream and my writing at robinb.card.co. Panelists, where can everybody find you?
You could find my work at youtube.com/@flowstatecrit. And yeah, I think that's just where I'll point people to today.
You can just find me generally at plottwists.card.co.
You can find me on Tumblr and Blue Sky at HumbleGoat. You can see the art that I do, including our podcast cover art, at scottwilkinson.myportfolio.com. And I think that's what I've got today too. I mean, we're about to shout out your local library and comic shop. I donated to my local library foundation this past week, and I think you should do that too, because they don't have as much funding as they deserve. So I suppose that's my plug for this week, is just give your local library money.
Be like Scout.
Yeah.
And before we go, since we just decided this at the beginning of the episode, you can find our schedule as always on insequence.pictures, but to just let you know ahead of time what's coming up next. 2 weeks from today, we're going to have an episode on Absolute Wonder Woman Volume 1, followed in 2 weeks increments by Frontier by Guillaume Singalan. I'm so sorry for not pronouncing that correctly. Followed by Beast Complex, which is 3 volumes in total. And then our next long read is going to be Blue Period. And we'll have this and a fuller schedule available on our website, but just wanted to give you a heads up for some of the stuff that's in the immediate future if you'd like to read along with us. And whether you do or not, as Scout said, remember to support your local library and comic shop. And thank you so much for listening.
And a Happy New Year to all.
And a Happy New Year, which will
Happy New Year.
Oh, shit.
happened at some point.
This is our first episode of 2026.
Yeah, I was going to say, wow, yeah, this is going to be it's so...
Too close.
So weird recording. It's weird recording ahead of time. Who knows the person will be in a month?
Who knows the person will be in a month?
All right. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
TWG, the worst garbage, online.